Shri Ganeshaya Namah, Shri Janaki Vallabha Vijayate, Shri Dwarikadishaya Namah. Here's wishing you all a very, very happy Hindu New Year. Today marks the beginning of Samvat 2081. The new year of Hindu calendar is marked by Sun and Moon coming together in the sign of Pisces on the first day of Chaitra Navaratri. This year, this Samvatsar is called Kala Yug. The name of the Samvatsar or year is given as per some calculations on the basis of the movement of Jupiter. Hence, it is called Barhaspatya, reckoning on the basis of the movement of Jupiter. So, what are the results of the Kala Yug Samvatsar? In Samhita Granths, Samhita is essentially the texts which dealt with mundane astrology, mundane matters, not predictive matters. So, there are many Samhitas, Brat Samhita, Bhadrabahu Samhita, Vashisht Samhita, Narad Samhita, etc. In the Samhita Grantha, what is written about Kala Yuga? It is written Roga Vriddhi Prajayeta. There is an increase in diseases. A number of diseases come to afflict people in general. Kala Yukte Visheshata. This is the speciality of this year called Kala Yukte. Raja Yuddham Bhaved Ghoram Vrishtir Ghora Varanane. There is a lot of strife that goes on in politics. Political parties, they put the interest of the nation last and their own self-serving interests first. And therefore, they lead the country to a difficult situation. The social fabric of the country is disturbed because of it. Vrishtir Ghora Varanane. Also, there is a deluge. There are very heavy rainfalls. There are inconsistent rainfall. The climate basically becomes a little uncertain to predict. So, lot of diseases, political strife and conflict, politicians playing their dirty games, and uncertain weather conditions. Varsha Prabodh says the outcome of the Kala Yuga year is Rajano Vikramakranta Bhunjate Shatru Medinim Vatsare Kala Yuktakhe Sukhinaha Sarvajantava. Enemy countries which are on your border, they try to disturb the stability of the country by creating hostile environment at the border as well as inside the country. So your enemy countries actually go about conspiring against you. How do we go about analyzing the new year as per the Indian method? One is the Varsha Pravesh chart. When sun and moon, they come together in mean at the same degree on the first day of Chaitra Shukla Navaratra. Second is what we call as jagat lagna. Jagat lagna is when sun enters the sidereal Aries. As you know, sidereal Aries is different from tropical Aries. Tropical Aries is you count from first degree, second degree, third degree onwards of Aries. As soon as vernal equinox starts, from that position of sun, you start counting. So you consider that as the first degree of Mesha or Aries. In sidereal zodiac, as used in the Hindu astrological system or Vedic astrological system, we actually don't go by that. We go by a fixed star, a nakshatra called Ashwini. And we consider sun's movement into the first degree of Ashwini as Mesha or Aries. Why we do that? Because that maintains stability over the years. There is a movement, wobbling of the Earth's axis, which we call as the precession of equinoxes. That is why the Vedic sages, they decided to go with the sidereal system. What it basically means for India for the next 6 to 8 months, extreme vigil has to be maintained at the borders. Also, the position of Saturn and the fact that this new year starts immediately after a solar eclipse, even though it was not visible in India, that astrological phenomenon certainly was an astrological astronomical phenomenon. So it has just started after a solar eclipse, and On 11th, Saturn and Mars get involved in an astronomical phenomenon called planetary war. They will be found to be within 1 degree of each other, and the winner will be decided on the basis of which is more north in its declination. That is a technical thing, we can ignore it. But the key point is that Saturn wins this war. Few things to consider. Saturn and Mars, they are sworn enemies. They are inimical to each other. Second, Saturn is the mantri or minister of this year in planetary cabinet. As we have cabinets in government, so planetary cabinets are also formed as per rules of mundane Vedic astrology. So in the planetary cabinet, the minister of this year is Saturn and the king of this year is Mars. So what has happened? The king has been defeated by the minister. The king and minister, they're not talking eye in eye. What will happen to the kingdom? This year, the world will be thrown to chaos of one kind or the other because of this very peculiar conflict that is happening. Saturn is in Aquarius, extremely powerful after having won this planetary war. After this war is over, immediately Mars goes and conjunct with Rahu. That is also a very, very damaging sort of a conjunction that is happening for mundane affairs. The ruler of the Samvatsar, the Raja of the Samvatsar, which is Mars in this case, has a say on war and peace matters, on business dealings, on who will stay in the country, will not stay in the country, on what are the kind of innovations that will happen, on how peace and order will be maintained internally and externally. All these things will be found to be the theme this year. And in addition to these particular things, which I have simplified for you, Uranus has retrograded back to Kritika 1, the first pada of Kritika, a few days back. Kritika is the constellation of Sun. Uranus retrograding back to Kritika in the sign of Aries. Kritika is the only Kritika 1 is the only pada of Kritika in Aries. The rest of the legs of Kritika Nakshatra, they fall under Taurus. What this means, Uranus being there, it shows that there will be a lot of protest against authority. Saturn represents the masses. With this position of Uranus and with Saturn having won the planetary war, there will be a lot of righteous indignation in people. So there will be fights at home. That is easy to manage. There will be fights at workplace. Also easy to manage. But there will be massive protests against government. All groups will be up in arms. Everyone will feel victimized. The entire world will suffer from a massive, massive, massive victim complex during this time. And that will lead to problems. Countries will feel slighted by others. World leaders will be very quick to get into impetuous decisions that will affect the world in manners that they will not be able to control after some time. This is what gives you an idea of the nature of events that will be seen in this year. How this will actually happen is there will be a resurgence of conservative philosophies across the world. As we have seen, there is a lot of liberal philosophies that have gained traction, which includes gender fluidity, which includes unconditional acceptance of migrants in many parts of Europe and even in the US, open border policy for migrants in the US, which includes acceptance of social norms which were considered unacceptable in many traditional societies, which includes the norms of cultural expression changing in mass media and communication and advertising everywhere. Okay, now is the time for a reaction. There will be reaction against this movement towards liberalism, which has been called as wokeism by certain people. You will see a lot of anti-woke moves. The protests will be repressed. There will be huge protests that will bring a lot of governments to their knees, a lot of democratic governments to their knees. What will happen is there will be a reaction, a political reaction towards conservatism. Conservative leaders will come to power and they will enact laws which will lead to a reverse move of migration. This country will overall see a lot of migrations as well as reverse migrations. The movement of people will be there. Why? In addition to what I talked about as conservative policies versus liberal policies, the war between conservative policies and liberal policies, there will be a lot of natural calamities this year across the world. Be that in the form of excessive rains, be that in the form of wildfires, be that in the form of sea storms, be that in the form of massive earthquakes and tsunamis. This year can lead to some of the most massive earthquakes seen in the past many years because of this great Northern American eclipse that is happening, because of this massive war that is happening between Saturn and Mars, because of the position of Uranus and the other planets overall put together, the kind of stelliums that have been formed. Because of all this, through the year, there will be major natural calamities, which will necessitate migration and evacuation. Next, this year is expected to cause major food crisis. There could be crop season failures. This year could see shortage of water because of extremely erratic weather condition in different parts of the country. And this year we'll see the conflicts that the world has seen intensifying. The conflicts which have been going on in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine will continue. Iran will probably join the fray in May this year, and it will prove extremely detrimental for the overall interest of that country should it decide to join. Iran will also suffer from a massive hit of famine that is quite strongly indicated, and civil strife. Iran could see the beginning of a chain of events that will ultimately lead to the annihilation of the government structure that, as we know in Iran, in the next 3 to 4 years. So essentially, resurgence of conservative ideologies, conflicts, violent public protests and demonstrations, food crisis, political persecution. All of these things will mean massive movement of people from one place to another, massive humanitarian crisis. Also, the combinations that are being formed this year are not conducive for the overall health of the people, like I talked earlier. There is an indication of another major epidemic that is going to come this year. And this epidemic will lead to massive deaths as well as relocation. In India, the southern part more afflicted by it. There will likely be a redrawing of political maps because of these conflicts that are happening. Established social norms, established cultural norms will come under question in both liberal and conservative societies because of these demographic changes. And people will want to stick back to what was originally there in their culture. This is the year that heralds an era of protectionism. This is the year that heralds a move towards puritanism, which is very similar to what happened prior to World War II. Put that along with all the other factors that we are seeing in the world that I've just talked about, the humanitarian crisis, the wars that are being fought, the natural calamities, and it seems that we are right on the onset of the World War III. It just needs a spark. A small spark is all that is needed to make it into a conflagration that will be very, very difficult to douse. So we, ladies and gentlemen, are right there at the cusp of the World War III. It is likely that in April this year or May this year, that is this month, within the next 1.5 months, there is a terror attack on America or some American military assets somewhere in the world, they come under the attack of terrorists or enemy nations, which will ensure the official entry of America into the war. Should this astrological prophecy come true, then a chain of events will be set into motion, which will ensure that there will be a sense of normalcy by the end of June. But come August, and many fronts will open simultaneously. India-China front will open. China-Taiwan front will open. Russia-Ukraine will intensify. NATO will join the war and Russia will get into direct engagement with NATO. Israel will be fighting wars with Syria, with Iran, and with other Muslim countries together. And then US will join the fray of the war with NATO and with Israel in Middle East and Russia respectively. If this is not the most likely scenario of the World War, what is it? And the chain of consequences, as well as the planetary cabinet configuration, they very strongly point to this possibility. This possibility cannot be negated. I'm aware that a lot of astrologers have said 2028 to 2032 will be World War III. In my astrological judgment, it seems like in the future, when historians will write about this time, then 2024 will be the marked as the period, 2024 May or June, which ultimately led to the war that was called the World War III. It is my sincere hope that this doesn't come true. It is my sincere hope that cooler heads prevail and that diplomacy is allowed to have its say in global politics and war is averted at all costs. This war is not going to benefit anyone. In addition to all this, there will be divisive legislations that will be done. We talked about the reaction that will lead to divisive legislation. Some countries will go forward and change their constitution in order to protect their culture. In some countries, especially in many Muslim countries, there will be a cultural revolution. You'll see a new generation of leaders coming in the Muslim countries. Some of them may be women leaders. Also, an entire new generation of leaders will be seen in African countries, which will be very good for those countries in the long run. There will be growth unabated in the artificial intelligence space. It will be faster than what the pundits have anticipated till now. And the concerns that are being raised about AI becoming dangerous would not be realized before Vikram Samvat 2023, which is 2.5 years down the line. There are likely to be significant breakthroughs in space exploration and nanotechnology. There are indications that there will be significant medical breakthrough this year after November 23, which will either lead to the cure of a deadly uncurable disease right now or will lead to genetic techniques which will ensure that the longevity of humans increase. So this entire race to increase the longevity of humans may be realized to an extent by the end of this year. From June onwards, Saturn's aspect on Mars, especially during its retrograde motion until around 15th November, it will lead to surprising developments globally. Many countries, there will be another wave of migration from a lot of Arabian countries, Ukraine, and a lot of African countries to Europe. Political strife is expected to engulf a lot of North African countries Egypt, and countries in Western and Central Africa. There could be famine-like situations in Africa, which will also lead to this massive emigration, but there will likely be a lot of political persecution that will make it possible. Specific to India, for the next 4 to 6 months, defense needs to be taken care of on the northern and the northeastern border with Pakistan and with China. There is a possibility of engaging with Pakistan on the western border also, which will happen after a very long time. But there is a strong possibility of that happening. This year, the seas will be on fire. A lot of conflicts will happen on the seas. Even for India, it is crucial that naval security is taken care of and given a lot of importance. The specific dates for these conflicts are not being given for in the interest of national security. Coming to Indian elections, Mars and Saturn in Aquarius in Navavarsha Pravesh as well as the Jagat lagna, it means that the political stability in India's capital will be compromised. Now, that may sound ironic, that may sound surprising because India has a very strong government. So how could the political stability be compromised? It can be compromised because this year will be one of the most bitterly fought elections. Acts of terror, communal riots, everything is game for course when it comes to these elections. These elections are likely to be very, very bitterly fought, and even after the results are declared, which will be in favor of the ruling party, there will be constitutional appeals and major propaganda that will keep the government on its toes till the first week of July in one manner or the other. After which things are likely to settle down. Like I mentioned, this is a year of communal riots. So I hope that the central government agencies and the state government agencies will be able to tackle that. Between the 23rd of March, a small indication around 16th, 18th March also, and the 30th of, between the, I'm sorry, between the 23rd of April and the 30th of May this year, there are very high chances of major earthquakes happening in northern and central Himalayas and in the states of Delhi NCR, Gangetic plains of Purvanchal part of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, Mizoram, Bengal, Nepal, and Balochistan. The entire Hindu Kush and Karakoram range, that also becomes the possible high impact seismic zone. July, August, there are likely to be flood-like situations in Himachal, Uttaranchal, and Bihar. July and August. Also, another spate of earthquakes are likely in same regions as I just talked about between August and December. So this year is likely to be an extremely difficult year from the point of view of natural calamities also. In April and May, a lot of countries in the Americas along the Pacific and the Atlantic coastline could see massive earthquakes, could see tornadoes, could see tsunamis. Things need to be taken care of when it comes to humanitarian response following these crises that could take place. The SDRF, the NDRF, they should all be properly manned and all resources should be available with them because a crisis is looking impending. There is an impending crisis which one can foresee astrologically. After September this year, a lot of coastal cities could come under the grip of major attack by the nature in terms of rise of sea levels or tornadoes and sea storms. This is the year where finally the long-standing prediction that a lot of sea-facing, sea-bound cities will slowly inundate, will start coming true. So this year is very bad from the point of view of troubles arising from the sea. Be that on the defense front that we talked, or be that because of the rise of sea levels and weather calamities near port towns. Yes. Between October 2024 and up to 7th of December will be a difficult time for some prominent politicians in India. This could also see the death of a prominent female politician. Globally, the conflicts will start to escalate from the beginning of the Samvatsar. We already talked about it. Israel-Palestine war will continue. Iran will join with very unfortunate consequences. Israel will suffer from the economic effects of this war for a really long time. Plus, there will be massive protests in Israel against the government, and Mr. Netanyahu may have to give up his prime ministership by the end of September because of the massive public protests. Similarly, massive protests by farmers, by communists, by immigrants can be seen in most of Europe, particularly UK. UK and Italy and Germany, these are the countries which will be worst hit. There will be protests that will be seen in the US, also in the France. But in both the countries, US and the France, they will be brutally repressed after a couple of rounds. In India, this will be the year of protests. The protests will keep continuing all through the year. One party moving to another party, someone or the other will keep protesting through the year, and therefore causing disturbance to public life and public convenience. Russia will become extremely aggressive this year, but it is also becoming extremely dependent on China, which will impinge on its ability to maneuver effectively during the war. And its massive war expenses will become slowly very difficult to manage till the time it has to enter into some sort of a devil's bargain with China that will take it out of the clutches of China. That will also happen this year. This year will also be very interesting because a workable solution to fossil fuels will be found. And over the next 3 to 4 years, the dependence of the world on fossil fuels will reduce by up to 80%. So all these Arabian countries which gained a lot during the 1930s starting in the 1930s because of oil, will have to find other way to sustain their riches and standard of living. There are very high likelihood of social reforms in many Arabic countries, like I mentioned. Japan will surprise the world with the kind of machinery and with the kind of ammunitions that it will create. It will create the next generation of weapons. And while China will have no impact of all the conflict in this year, after July 2025, it will find itself stuck in a very complex geopolitical vortex, and its decline will ultimately be fueled by the ascension of an increasingly militarized Japan. This is very important. An increasingly militarized Japan that has already started will start to see the kind of weapons that come from Japan will just leave everyone surprised. They are the new generation of weapons. No one can touch them. They will become kind of invincible again after the slumber that they have been in through the past 35 years. Also, this war that I talked about, should that actually happen on all the fronts, and should it conflagrate, it will be the biggest war that the world has seen after World War II, only that it will be much more bloodier. Japan will also see major natural calamities. Countries like Yemen, Qatar, Iran, Pakistan, Egypt, and many countries in North and Western Africa will face economic hardships. Economic hardships will also befall a lot of countries in the upper hemisphere of Southern America. So the upper part of South American continent. June onwards, all economies will start to feel the impact of recession and inflation, including India. Oil prices will hit the roof starting this month. Gold prices will hit the roof. There could be massive swings in the share market. I have not done a comprehensive analysis of what the stocks and commodities exchanges across the world might fare, how the world and how they might fare. I'll do that in a separate video and post it at a later date. This has been mentioned that this Samvatsar will see another major health epidemic, likely spread to animals to humans, and which will cause major loss of life. Please be aware of this and be careful about this. There is an astrological certainty. A lot of what I have mentioned in this video are certainties. Some are probabilities which have been mentioned. There is an astrological certainty that there will be a lot of government measures in terms of legislation and otherwise that will result in massive protests, including censorship and policies affecting social issues. This will particularly be true to India and in general be true throughout the world. Significant policy shifts across the world, protectionist measures, anti-immigration laws, constitutional changes, pro-immigration laws which will be bitterly contested in the political circles of the respective nations, leading to change of guard and new leaders coming in. Specific to India, a few changes are quite likely. One is a major censorship bill could come about the kind of content that could go on social media. A lot of content creators could be arrested. This is not a good year for content creators. I'm also becoming a kind of a content creator, so that doesn't make me very happy. But this is not a good year for content creators, especially with the kind of censorship that will be coming in India. It will be of a very specific nature related to hate and related to vulgarity. It is coming. It is coming for sure. Astrologically, there are 100% indications that it is coming. There will also be legislations related to reduction of population, reduction of growth of population. And the Uniform Civil Code will be implemented by the end of this Samvatsar, which is before the 29th of March next year. So, legislation related to control of population, along with measures intended to improve the longevity of the newborn and the health of the newborn, will ensure that while infant mortality will come down significantly, also the fertility rate as calculated over the next 5 years will see a significant dip. The biggest problem for India, natural calamities and communal riots this year. I am genuinely hopeful that the government will be able to control communal riots, and I pray and request all of you not to fall prey to divisive rhetoric, which will mostly be fueled in the elections by political parties for small gains. And those parties are not going to win also, but they would have made sure that the social fabric of the country has been weakened. There is a lot of conspiracy which is quite clearly going on against the Indian Union. That is very clear astrologically also. There are major forces at play which want to stop the growth of India. There are major forces at play which want to stop the cultural consciousness that is rising in this country right in its track. So I pray, I hope that the communal harmony in the country is maintained and there are no unnecessary losses of life. Please make sure that while you ensure that your democratic obligation of casting your vote is met, Please avoid joining political rallies if possible. Please avoid possible, because there are chances that successfully antisocial elements will try and create mischief, leading to loss of life during the event. That is all from my side. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what the astrological Hindu New Year Samvat 2081 looks like. Till we meet next, take care. All the best. Namaskar.